Hello and welcome to this Focus Functionality webinar. My name is Alistair Slade and I am the Technical Director here at Chronologic. This video was originally a live event, but there were issues with the sound recording and this narration has been added later. We offered attendees the chance to type in questions which I answered at the end of the formal presentation. As existing users will know, Focus has come a long way in the last few years and has evolved into a full workforce management system in line with customer requirements. Things like being able to add pictures to employees' records, and being able to right-click on an employee name and jump to other places in the system really quickly and easily, as well as many other large and small but significant changes. If you are new to Focus and would like some update training, please get in touch by emailing hello@chronologic.co.uk or calling 01761 410015. The main emphasis today is the HR capability within Focus. We will be covering the following features: the fully customizable HR module, the ability to store and find employee information and related documents quickly, using Focus as a central repository, reminders and alerts, reporting, and finally payroll and holiday management. Those of you who are familiar Focus will recognize the easy-to-use layout of the screens. We have friendly icons up here, some of which you may not be familiar with yet, like the workflow and fire report. There are also text-based menus available at the very top if you prefer. The tree structure on the left changes depending on what you're doing within the system, and the main area on the right is where most of the activity takes place. This is the employee screen. As you can see here, we have the name of the employee, the personal identification number, the payroll number, and other details. The PIN and password can be used with the self-service module for employees to access Focus across the internet. This means that they can clock at their PC or indeed on a mobile phone, and if they do that, the geolocation of the employee's clocking will be recorded and will be visible on the timesheets. Employees also have the opportunity to see their timesheet and their calendar. They can also see an availability screen which will enable them to see if they are able to book holiday or not. You can decide whether or not an employee can see other employees' names in the same groups that they are in. Ensuring employees only try and book holiday when they can actually take it saves time, as managers won't be refusing holiday unnecessarily. We're on the Contact tab at the moment, and you can see here that we've got the standard types of things like address details and contact details, as well as their national insurance number. The Groups tab is where we tell Focus which groups the employee is in, and indeed which they were in historically as well, so that we have the start and end dates. This enables historical reporting to be correct on things like absences within groups. We also have the ability here to choose the fire muster group. The Rules tab is where we tell Focus how we wish the hours for that employee to be calculated. Don't forget that Focus doesn't have to just be used for hourly paid employees, but it can be used for other things as well, including flexi time, time off in lieu, or lieu time. The work schedule up here on the left tells the system when we expect that employee to work. This might be simple Monday to Friday, normal times. It might be a 2-week pattern for double days, 3-week patterns for triples, continentals or 4-on 4-offs, all of which can be set within Focus very easily. In this case, we can see that the employee has set to use his rota, and that they are set to a standard Monday to Friday pattern. Using the rota within Focus, shifts can be allocated to employees on a random basis or using predetermined patterns. Manning levels can also be set as required and employees allocated to shifts in that way as well. The rota can also be used to pre-authorize overtime should that be required. The weekly rule is used to enable clawback and overflow to be actioned. Clawback is where an employee doesn't work enough time on one day but has worked overtime on another, and that overtime is clawed back to fill up the basic week. Overflow is where they've worked more basic than they need to, and overtime is accrued. The rota weekly limit hours is available so that managers know when they schedule too many hours against an employee on the rota. Over here, we can see that values have been set for maximum shift hours and maximum break hours. These override the general settings within the system. Here we can also set the default cost center for the employee. The flexi-time rule is used if the employee is allowed to accrue flexi-time. The flexi-time system within Focus is very powerful and can be used not only to monitor flexi-time in the normal way for both councils and other white-collar environments, but also be used to take the overflow from the flexi-time and either pay it as overtime or accrue it to toil independently. The default daily rule section is used if no shift is found within the system, or indeed the rota template rule is used when managers type in start and end times on the rota rather than using predetermined shift start and end times. Down here in the rate factor section, we can set the gross hourly pay. This enables you to run reports on cost variance. You can report on the hours that are planned and then the hours that were actually worked and look at the variance. Underneath that, we have the ability to set the pay references. These are the pay element numbers within the payroll system for importing hours directly from Focus into the payroll system. This saves double keying and reduces errors accordingly. Holidays. Holidays within Focus can be managed by the day or by the hour. In both cases, either fixed or earned, and that includes public and personal holiday. Loo time can be managed in both days and hours. By clicking on this button here, we can see the historical records for both holiday with carryovers, public holiday, and time off in lieu. The date tab is very simple. It has the start, leaving, and date of birth fields. The date of birth field can be used to change the way that breaks are deducted for example, younger employees. This can be done automatically within Focus. Memos are little one-liner records that can be put against an employee record in Focus. The system records the date and time and the user that record was created by. And we can see later that these can be reported on as well. Fully customizable. In addition to the standard tabs we have just seen, you also have the ability to add whatever tabs you like with a full selection of field types. Here's one I made earlier for all you Blue Peter fans. Some of our customers already use this for recording things like uniform sizes for hats, scarves, boots, and for reordering and issue dates. It is really simple to add the fields and new tabs. Here is our first aid tab. At the moment, we have the ability to say whether an employee is a first aider or not. What we don't have is an expiry date for their certificate. Let me show you how easy it is to add fields to the employee screens. We go to System Setup and User Fields. We click on New, and we can type in the field name, making sure we spell it correctly. The field name needs to have no spaces or strange characters because it is a field within the database. The field title is what shows on the Employee tab. In this case, we're going to choose the date. But while we're here, let's just have a look at the other types of field we can have. Text, number, path, a file, or a list. Column break allows you to create different tabs. Those are the different types of field that can be created within the system. Today we're going to choose a date field. Now if we go back to the employee screen, we can see that the first aid expiry date field has appeared. Let's put a date in against that. Here we're going to choose the year and the month and select the day within the month accordingly. Once you save that, the record turns from yellow while it was in edit to white again, and you can see the date is now stored against the employee. Later we will see how the reports will use this information. For a business to be able to ensure that it has enough first aiders or fire marshals on site, that PPE is up to date, and that there are enough qualified forklift drivers on site, all automatically saves lots of manual effort and time while ensuring you are complying with health and safety requirements. Store and find employee information quickly. Documents including CVs, acceptance letters, signed contracts, work visas, grievances and disciplinary, and other documents and scanned certificates can now be stored directly in the database. That's a new feature that's been added quite recently. Here is an example of a certificate that we've put in the system to show you that documents can be saved in an electronic format directly within the database and then retrieved as easily as clicking on a button. As you can see, there are several different screens here with all the different types of field that can be used within the system. Training records can be set up like this with expiry dates against the different types of training that has taken place, and descriptor fields can be used as well next to the dates if more information is needed. The dates and references can then be used in reporting, as we'll see later. Confidential. When you have focus users like line managers, team leaders and supervisors, access to this data can be controlled through the user login credentials, enabling you to choose what information each focus user can see, including filtering down to tab level in these employee screens, as well as restricting which groups a focus user has access to. With standardization of documentation storage and retrieval with full access management, the focus system will give you the confidence that HR and employment law are not being compromised by inconsistencies. All staff are treated exactly the same while protecting personal information and ensuring compliance. Central repository. As you can see, by storing everything in one place, you get rid of multiple spreadsheets. Who has access to what data is controlled through the user setup within the focus system. This enables easy access to relevant data for anybody responsible for staff at whatever level, with easy control of what can be seen and edited. We will see later how you can report on important information quickly and easily. Reminders and alerts. As part of the data storage, date fields can be added and then used to alert users. This includes things like appraisals, work permits, certificate and license expiry, and even MOT and service dates. automation of alerts is now available using the Workflow module. For those of you who haven't seen the Workflow module before, this is a screen that can be presented to a user when they first log into Focus. It shows the user all the alerts that are currently active. This includes things like the employee forklift truck certificate expiry date, exceptions within the system, no-shows, hygiene certificates, and employee probationary periods. You can set up different types of workflows for different types of users and limit each user to the ones you want them to be able to see. The output from workflows can be automatically emailed to users or printed out automatically on a timed basis, as we will see later. Let's create a new one. We just right-click here on the desktop and click Add. In this case, let's choose one of the employee fields. Let's say the employee dates. This then gives you access to all the fields that you've created with the date format. Let's choose hard hat expiry. So, having chosen the employee dates and the groups that are affected, we can set different levels for the traffic lights. This will enable us to show green, amber or red, depending on the severity of the situation. We can then set how many days we intend to look forward for this particular workflow, and that shows us which employees are currently within that date range now. And that is how easy it is to create a workflow, in this case for hard hat expiry. Within the system, we can enable the emailing of that information through to the people who require it. This includes the person who's created this particular workflow and group supervisors. We can also schedule this particular workflow to happen whenever we want to. For example, the no-show workflow can be set to be emailed 10 minutes after the beginning of a shift. There are various settings for the email, including what to include in the subject, the content of the email, and when the email should be sent. This is often set to always as a positive confirmation, even if there are no records to show. We can also see when the email has been sent. You can also set up workflows so they can print automatically. So in the same way that an email can be scheduled, a direct print to a user's printer on their desk can be set up to print whenever required. Earlier you may have noticed I clicked on the Run Now option for the email workflow. Let's just bring up the email that was sent, and we'll show you that here we have a live email that was sent based on the workflow that we set up earlier on. Workflows then can be set up to do many different things, using many different areas within the system, including all the dates that you set yourself within the system in the HR module. We can say which groups they apply to, whether we want traffic light filtering, and the date range over which they are active. We can set the system to email those automatically to one or many people, or print them off in the same way. Not forgetting that this screen can be set up to show automatically as soon as the user logs into Focus. As you can see, by adding the Workflow module, you can include important things like expiry dates and have them brought to your attention automatically, either when you first log into Focus or by emails in your inbox or printouts on your printer. Reporting. There are many built-in reports within the Focus system, including things like the Bradford factor, clockings reports, holidays, and lateness. We also have the ability within the system to set up our own reports. We can do that very easily for absences and employee information especially. This is based on the information that is within the system as standard and that which you've added yourself. Here we can see the first aid expiry report. This uses the dates from the field that we created earlier on. Any of the fields that you've created are visible so that you can choose to use them for reporting purposes. Here you can see that this person is a first aider and the expiry date of their certificate. The filter at the top dictates which employees are shown based on the time frame selected. Let's create a new one. Let's use the hard hat expiry date. We can also filter by the hard hat expiry date, and we can see people appear on the report accordingly, and we can save that as a template for later. This saves you having to select all the parameters every time. We can say or not whether it was a public or private report as well. Public allows any user of Focus to use the system, and private means it's only visible to yourself. Once we save that report, you'll see it appears up here in the list, and we can access it again at any point. You can create as many reports as you like with any of the fields in the HR module within the system, either standard fields or the ones you've added yourself. Let's have a look at the other reports within the system. Absence reports, for example. Holiday this month. Absence reports can be set up by using either one or many types or reasons, or choosing from a list of available reasons by ticking the various boxes. You can also choose which groups are going to be reported on, either one or many. There are various date options, as you can see, within the system. Choosing periods shows us each of the separate occurrences. Employees shows us the employee totals. Group averages, including the Bradford factor for each of the groups, can also be selected. There is a Bradford factor report as well for reporting on specific employees. Having created this report for whatever purpose, in the same way that we could save the employee report templates, we can save off the absence period report as well. What other reports have we got in the Focus system? We've got simple absence reports and attendance, the Bradford factor, raw clockings, access control clockings. Remember that Focus can have access control units connected so that access through gates and barriers and doors can be facilitated directly using the same database as used for the workforce management system as a whole. The Clockings Edits report enables you to report on the edits made to the timesheet by supervisors and managers. The Cost Variance report allows you to report on the difference between the planned and actual labour costs within the system. If you're using FlexiTime, then the FlexiTime reports are here. The Holidays report can be used to report on how many days are left for each employee to take, so that you don't end up at the end of the year with lots of holiday. It's nothing worse than trying to cram in all the holidays at the end of the year. The infringement report gives you an overview of all the different types of infringements, and there is a specific lateness report that details that information. The time lost against each person is shown. Very useful for appraisals. Here is a report to show you who is currently logged into the system, and the report to report on those one-liner memos we saw earlier. I'll come back to the payroll report in a minute. You can take reports on the timesheets, totals by employee, totals by week. The Who's In report allows you to set a date and time and see who was currently clocked in at the time. The Working Time Regulations report allows you to report on the average hours worked per week for the European Working Time Directive, although I'm not sure how long that will still be active. And you can also use it to calculate the average hours worked over a number of weeks for holiday calculations. This brings us back to the payroll report. If we go in and have a look, we will see that the payroll report can be taken over multiple different periods. Let's get some employees to show. There we go. So you can choose which group you're going to report on. You can say whether it's by week, by date or by day, and whether or not hours and minutes or hours and decimal are required. However complex your calculation rules are for hours within the system, Focus can cope, whether it's just basic or simple overtime calculations, or to include holiday and sickness, as well as shift allowance and other calculations. Focus is very powerful. Money fields are now available so that bonuses, call-out and standby payments can be recorded within the system so that they can automatically be sent through to payroll as required. The calculations of these bonuses and monetary fields can be quite complex and set up within the system to automatically calculate the values for you. Once the exceptions have been handled, the hours can be exported in a format that matches the import format for your payroll system. Timesheets can also be locked to ensure that any audit between the Focus system and your payroll system is consistent. Here we can see that all the timesheets are locked. This indicates to Central Admin that all the managers have carried out their exceptions and the payroll is ready for export to the payroll software. A simple report can be run by clicking up here. We don't need to recalculate the timesheets and they're already locked, so we don't need to lock them. And here we can see the standard payroll report that comes with the system. And as with any other report within the system, you can save this report as a PDF or to Excel and several other formats. You can email it directly from this screen, and you can even print it on a piece of paper if you really want to. You can even email each employee a detailed payroll report directly from the system if you require. The hours can also be exported in several different formats. If your payroll program doesn't show, then we can create a custom export to suit the requirements of the import for that specific software. If we unlock a timesheet a minute, you'll see a red exclamation mark appears. This indicates to Central Admin that that timesheet is yet to be authorized by the appropriate manager, and it isn't time to run payroll yet. I mentioned earlier the ability to right-click on an employee's name within Focus and navigate to different parts of the system very quickly and easily. The options that show when you right-click are dependent on the place where you carry that action out. And this brings me very nicely in this case to the calendar. The calendar provides you with a year-in view for a specific employee. Here you can see the personal, public and loo time as well as sick days. You can print this screen off in list format or in colour to hand to the employee should they wish to see where they have holiday booked. You can simplify the screen as well by unticking various items to only show what you want to see. You'll notice that the key on the left hand side is dynamic and matches what you'll have selected. If you have the employee self-service module, then the employee can see this screen on the internet. The employee self-service module also enables the employee to request absence through the system. This will come through as an exception to managers to be authorized. So, how as a manager would I know whether or not I can authorize that holiday? Well, in this case we go to the availability screen. And you can see here that we can choose a particular month to look at, the group of people that we want to see, and we can see how many people have got available out of the total on any one day in the month, or show how many are already absent, with or without the schedule. This we can then use to confirm whether or not we should allow an employee to have holiday. Holiday can be booked on this screen directly or on the calendar. You can simply drag to select the holiday dates you wish to book and then the type of absence. We notice here that we have got a red alert showing that this employee has gone over their balance, warning us that we shouldn't allow that person to have the holiday. So let's delete that back off. There we go, all gone. So not only can you see visually in graphical form like this how many people are already on holiday, and also on the calendar screen for a whole year for a specific employee, you also have the holidays report that enables you to report on all the employees within your group and how many days they've got left to take before the end of the year. That's the end of the formal presentation, and here are the answers to the questions that we were asked. We were asked, how do you see who else is already booked off on holiday? And that is done here on the availability screen, where we can choose the group of people that we're looking at, and we can see who's already booked off. Can we import information into the system? There is the ability to import CSV files directly into the system, and you can import all the different fields that are in the system already and all the fields that you've created yourself. This can be used to quickly import information directly into the system. If you use the column headers in the CSV file with the exact match for these field titles within Focus, then Focus will automatically match the different fields for you, so you don't have to manually indicate which fields mean what, keeping it very simple and easy. We were asked how we get employee information that we've put in the system back out again. We do this using the employee report within the system. We can choose from all the different types of fields that are either built in or have been added by you as a user and output it accordingly. We were asked if this webinar was going to be made available as a recording, and here it is. So feel free to pass this on to other people within your organization. I was also asked what happens if we re-import information against an employee. You're given the opportunity to merge the data rather than overwrite it. The payroll number is the unique key that makes sure that you don't overwrite data by mistake. We were asked about the fire report. Well, the fire report is very similar to the watch screen in that it takes the data of who's in right now, either from the TNA data if you've only got time and attendance, or possibly from the access control data for sites where it's an open site and people move between buildings. The system can either provide a report by clicking on the fire report icon directly in the software. You can have a fire report icon sitting on a desktop of the fire marshals and reception's computers, or we can connect a fire alarm interface to your fire alarm panel, which will receive a message when the fire alarm goes off, send it to the server, and the system can print off as many copies of the fire alarm report as you require. We were asked about a report on the training information within the system. So long as you have created the right fields in terms of dates, here we've got generic fields, but you can have training records based on your requirements. You can indeed add text fields which give more description for each of the training courses as well, which can also be reported at the same time. Any of the fields that you've put in and created are available in the employee report screen, and these can be saved off as templates rather than having to select them every time. I think that covers all of the questions that we had, and we'll just run through what we've covered. We've covered the fact that the system is fully customizable, that you can store and find employee information and related documents quickly, that Focus is a central repository, reminders and alerts can be created within the system, we can report on the data within the system, and we can manage payroll and holiday, all quickly and efficiently. As I mentioned earlier, if there is functionality that you've seen today and you're not sure how it works, please talk to us about organising some training. We've only covered this subject at a high level, so if you would like more details on anything we have covered, please get in touch.